City Lights on Location continues with our special look. As a matter of fact, I must explain something to you and try for some degree of honesty. It's extraordinary to get off an airplane, rush into a theater, see Poltergeist, on which you say, I was the David Selznick of this movie. Go out and eat a meal, run back into a movie theater, and see E.T., about which you, Steven Spielberg, say, it's the most personal movie, perhaps with the exception of Close Encounters, that we have received from you as your sixth film. And then to walk out and think, how does one organize one's thoughts to meet a filmmaker and say, thank you for the most extraordinary double bill of my adult life, where instead of having a box of popcorn in between, I had rack of lamb. And I have this feeling that Steven Spielberg has given us a present for the summer of '82 that can best be defined as a combination of your heart and mind.
Well, gee, that's hard to respond to because those are, thank you very much. I made these two movies very close together. I will never make two movies very close together again. I, on the other hand, didn't have rack of lamb between both pictures. I essentially had matzah and butter, and that was about it, and went right into the next movie. But both movies were very good for me to make so in such close proximity to each other because both being rooted in suburbia, in a kind of middle-class suburbia, both essentially employing similar kinds of tract housing, and yet one movie being about a scream and the other movie being about a kind of soft whisper. It was very good for me because I was able to trade off objectivity, which I think is very important for a movie director or a writer or anybody who has to stand away from his work and look back and say, I know how to make that better. It's good to have diversions. And I was very lucky because I was able to have a hostile diversion with Poltergeist, with spiritual warmth in places, and I was able to have a very warm, tender diversion with E.T., and I kept putting one into the other, not meaning I didn't share E.T. with Poltergeist, but it cleared my mind. When you eat sushi, I don't know, when you eat sushi, the Japanese say you must take the ginger and eat a little bit of the ginger between sushi courses because it clears the palate and it makes you more receptive to the taste of the food. It was the same way with these two movies. So in that sense, I think both films so close helped each movie individually. But it didn't help me. I'm ready for like a year off now.
When you say, Stephen, as you did, that you are, and I liked it, which is obviously why it's on my mind, that you are the David Selznick of Poltergeist, and when one realizes the kind of historical precedent you can throw out, whether it's you and George Lucas looking at old serials and saying, gee, 25 years later they don't stand up, let's make our own idea of what we thought they were. And always that concept of where the reality is less than the dream unless you can recreate the dream.
Yes.
You're one of the few people alive who can give us back the dream and make it better.
Well, movies are about dreams, and I just remember when I grew up, I had Walt Disney on my team, so to speak, and I had the 18th re-release of Wizard of Oz, and Mary Martin's Peter Pan was on television, and my parents were very strict about my going to films. I essentially really wanted to see horror films. I wanted to see Mars Needs Women. My parents said, you cannot see Mars Needs Women. I want to take you and let you experience Fantasia for the first time when I was very young. And I just remember feeling entertained like I never felt really in the 60s or early 70s and wondering what was missing from American cinema. Because American cinema was becoming like the European noir. It was becoming very introspective, and it was becoming brilliant. Certainly just really fascinating. American cinema has gone in very eclectic directions. But my appeal was always back with films that made me feel something and were complete thoughts with a beginning where you could see the end, but you didn't quite know how it would end. So the audience always had signposts, and they always knew this film is going to end. I can see the ending getting closer and closer, but I'm having a great time along the way, as opposed to the Bergman-esque Scenes from a Marriage, where it's very much of a it's brilliant, but it's concentric. And I've always liked to make linear movies, and George Lucas has really enjoyed making linear films. And that's just the difference between me and Scorsese. Is technically we know as much about film. I know as much. Marty knows as much about film technically as I do, and vice versa. But Marty makes wonderfully brilliant personal introspections that are somewhat concentric, and I like more linear storytelling.
You said that when you read the first draft, you knew this was it. You
Yeah.
knew you could make this.
Yeah.
And I suppose after you and Melissa Matheson, that perhaps the next most important person in the creation of E.T. is Carlo Rambaldi,
Yes.
a two-time Academy Award winner. What is Carlo Rambaldi's contribution, he said unknowingly, to E.T.?
Well, Carlo, you know, essentially was the first heartbeat that got E.T.'s cardiovascular system pumping, and it was Carlo and I together who essentially created the look of E.T., and then Carlo who gave birth to him, to couch it magically as opposed to technically. I'm proudest of E.T., but I'm also very proud of Henry Thomas, who holds the picture together in a kind of, I mean, he sort of, we experience E.T.'s experiences through Henry's eyes.
When you talk about the importance, and I really enjoyed the comparative study of what a tear coming out of Henry Thomas's eye means in relation to impact. And I didn't come all this way to bring up the thing about human values, because you've made two movies that have so much to do with human values, and I was thinking about them, and that if E.T., which I believe it is about love and discovery and faith and understanding, there's a moment in Poltergeist where all of those emotions can be put into a moment which happens when Craig Nelson looks at Jo Beth Williams and mouths the sentence, "I love you," and her lips form the same word silently. And it's like some kind of key between the same man's feelings, making two extraordinarily different and yet very similar movies emotionally.
They had gone through such an ordeal in Poltergeist that really all they had left was love and the lives of their family, never expecting that the experience was about to reoccur in total force. You know, I Love You really is about what those films were about, and I Love You really is essentially what held my family together for so long, living in a kind of suburban tract. You know, I'm part of a family unit. I didn't have an urban experience. I didn't have an urban upbringing. I just sort of came from the suburban tract sticks. And that's all I know.
Then there are those of us, Stephen, who remember you once being caught unknowingly by a camera mouthing the words, "I love you," to another human being.
Yes.
In public.
Paid dearly for that, too.
Yes, but then you put it on film for the world to see.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this, and I hope it's the first in a series of meetings with you.
I hope so.
Come
I really
to Canada.
enjoyed talking to you. I'd like to. I've never been. I'd love to come to Canada.
I will welcome you.
Great. My friends at SCTV keep saying come to Canada, too, so maybe I'll make it a double trip.
Well, I know them, and you know them, and now we've met, so let's all get together in Toronto.
Great.
I thank you for E.T. and Poltergeist.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.